Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a gentleman here that I've known since a youth here in Toronto, a baller, goalkeeper from Flemington Park, and he has elevated himself in the soccer slash football world, and I'm proud of this guy. I was pleasantly surprised when I went to Jamaica for the farewell game and realized he was part of the coaching staff.
Yeah, obviously Hubert Busby Jr., born and raised in Toronto, came through the Scarborough Youth Soccer Association, played for Maple Leaf Soccer Club. I don't think they exist anymore, but obviously came through and played with the likes of Nick Bontis, Dave Benning, Earl Cochrane's names of people who were very familiar in the soccer world. I played there for over 10 years and obviously went off to school and took on a pro career after going to Queen's University, and it took me abroad where I was able to play in England, Portugal, and Holland. Upon retirement, came back, played domestically a little bit with all the teams, Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. Played for all three of those clubs in what at that time was the A League. Upon retirement, went into coaching with the Ottawa Wizards. Was very successful. I think probably too successful too soon as a young win Canadian national championship and the treble as a young coach. And I think back of where I was then and where I was now. I think, man, I had success too early. I really thought I knew everything about the game, but that experience kind of propelled me to come full circle as a coach or as a player for the Toronto Lynx, to then take over as a coach for the Toronto Lynx in the A League, which is a little bit baptism by fire. I'm really grateful for the Hard Trails for giving me the opportunity for such a young coach within the A League. I think I've obviously learned a lot from that since then. It's been a long time since 2005, 2006 season, and since then I've been coaching a different technical director's role across. Spent time obviously with the Vancouver Whitecaps in numerous capacities, boys academy, women's head coach, working with their affiliates, obviously working with Seattle Sounders women where I was a head coach and GM. Very fortunate to be able to go and coach in the WPS, where I was arguably coaching for the biggest club in WPS with the LA Soul, which I had the privilege of working with the best player, I feel, women's player of this generation, with Marta. We were very successful. We had players like Aya Mayama, Camille Abili, Shannon Box, Karina LeBlanc, an array of characters that I think really kind of allowed for me, under the guidance of head coach Abner Roger, to really be more than just an assistant coach with that team, involved with all aspects of that. And I think it's been a real kind of whirlwind after that. I was approached by Coach Menzies when I was with Sounders, told me about the project with that Sadella Marley was the ambassador, told me about what they were looking to do alongside Lauren Donaldson, and told me about me as a former international player to come back and give back to Jamaica, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. After all, that's where I learned the game. I'm a Waterhouse boy. My roots are deep in Jamaica football. My late uncle, Loxley Cumry, was once the Jamaica Football Federation president. Obviously, close ties with Boys Town. So the opportunity to give back, to Jamaica. Obviously, I had a short spell with the Reggae Boys in the early 2000s. So when Coach Menzies approached me and Coach Lauren Donaldson approached me and said, hey, we've got this project. We really want to shape women's football, but also leave a message and a lasting, footprint in terms of what Jamaica football is. As far as the women's football is concerned, really build a program. I couldn't hesitate to jump on board. And so very grateful for those guys who were like brothers to me, mentors to me. I really look up to them. And when they said to come and work with them, along with Sadella Marley, who's their project, is something I couldn't refuse. And And so it's taken us, some trials and tribulations. Obviously, there's always difficult moments, but I really am grateful for the opportunity to be a part of a program that I continue to believe is on the rise. And obviously, having experienced the World Cup.
Okay, hold on. Before you get into the World Cup, so just a little wrap up on in the coaching aspect of it. I want to at this point congratulate you. I understand you been, I don't know if it's an interimship or if you actually been given the official position of head coach of the Reggae Girlz. So is that an interim position or were you actually given the head coaching job of the?
Well, we've had discussions, obviously, for me to continue on in my capacity as well as the technical advisor of the program. I think, in lieu of the pandemic that happened, everything was kind of put to, put to the side a bit, which I completely understand. I've had conversations with the president, and things are very, very positive. I think on both sides, I think it's important for us to come to terms in regards to, a understanding what the expectations are when you don't have, anything on the horizon. Obviously, I'm still going to be overseeing the U17s. We should have, of April 2020, we should have had the qualifiers in Toluca, Mexico, and that's been shelved. So obviously that's something that we're still not sure when that's going to take place. But I think it's important that all the countries, especially those, in the Caribbean, the idea of the women's programs going dormant, in between 2-year cycles, it just can't happen. We just fall
Correct.
further and further behind other countries that are investing in doing what they feel is necessary to grow the game. Not just the women's game, but, it always comes back to the women's game. But when you talk about growing the game, men or women, youth, it's all part of it. It's all encompassing. Growing the game, coaching education, referee development, governance, all those things are important in the West Indies, in the Caribbean, in terms of truly growing the game. And so, we can't stand and sit on our laurels. We can't go between 20 years between our men going and our women's team to get back to the next World Cup. And I know that's one thing the Federation is adamant in. Obviously, our men's team is hopefully looking to qualify to Qatar in the next little while. But I want to obviously, make sure that the women's team and, qualifies as well. We all want the men's team to go, but it's important that the women's team is not put on, is not laid dormant during that time. So to go back to your question, I think it's important that we come to an understanding that, to move forward, these are things that we want to see happen. Obviously, the Federation wants that to happen too. But obviously, for me personally, it needs to, I need to be reassured from my standpoint that that those things are going to happen, so we can continue to grow the program the way that we all wanted to see. So if those things align, then obviously I'd happy to continue as the head coach and technical advisor for the program. And I'm based on our conversations with the president, and the new technical committee they have established, I think we're on the same page that way. So, I'm positive that things can be worked out.
You've been you got onto the coaching staff. How was that? How was the experience? Obviously, you got the new terrain from Donaldson and these guys, but culturally, how was the adjustment?
Yeah, the adjustment was good. Obviously, when we first got down there, it's nothing to what it was like today. We started, doing fitness testing and beat testing to find out in a lot of cases our senior women's players were far beyond what youth players were getting on in terms of their fitness. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done in terms of getting Jamaica on the senior women's level where it should be. Coinciding with that, we obviously started looking into the U17s and U20 programs, and we started to see some changes. We were able to identify players earlier on, the likes of Khadisha Shah's a U17 player. Obviously, Konya Plumbers were coming through at that time. The Trudy Carters were just finishing off school at the University of Tampa. So University of South Florida rather. So there's some talent that was there, but in terms of harvesting was definitely a challenge.
So let me ask you. Were you there? How long you were with that program, in terms of years?
Well, I joined in 2015.
2000. So you were actually there for the. Were you there for the revamping of the program, where the program came back into fruition?
Absolutely. So I think after the failed qualifiers in 2014, that's when obviously Coach Hugh and Lauren approached me about being involved with 15s, heading into obviously the next senior women's cycle. So that's when I got involved. Like I said, I was working with the Sounders women at the time, and they wanted me to come on board, help out the program. Primarily came in and worked with the keepers, with the senior team, but also helped with all aspects of the program, in terms of helping out, doing some coaching with the 20s, helping out, doing the coaching with the 17s, while overseeing all the goalkeepers within that age group. I was also asked to kind of oversee some coaching duties within that framework as well, which is obviously good. I give credit, and I'm very grateful for Hugh to give me the opportunity to be more than just obviously a keeper coach within the program. And I think the way that he managed that staff was very good. And so we just went about a program, or a plan rather, trying to see how we can qualify for the 2019 World Cup in France.
I saw the farewell game. It was, I think, a 2-1 or 3-1 against Panama. So you're off. Now you're going to the big dance. The atmosphere, I guess there was a certain amount of anticipation, anxiety, you name it, within the squad. You had any World Cup background in terms of coaching, or as a player in terms of the youth level or anything?
Well, I think obviously I've gone through the World Cup qualifiers with the Reggae boys. I think obviously that helps, but nothing. What I've come to realize, I mean, like everything else, you realize that the nations who have, men and women who have consistently gotten to the World Cup, they advanced by the second round for a reason. There's, especially when you have players who are carryovers, because there's things that happen there that you just can't prepare for. And there's things that people tell you about. I remember sitting and speaking with Claudine LeBlanc in Miami, December 2018, in the CONCACAF offices, and she's telling me, she's like, Buzz, trust me, it's going to be different. There's things that you aren't going to be able to to plan for, the things that you need to plan for, understand this, that they have to learn a hard way. Obviously, Canada have to learn a hard way in terms of going there earlier on. Yeah. How do you surround yourself and build a fortress around the team, and really keep out the distractions, And I remember her saying that to me, and I obviously remember afterwards going, wow, she was so correct.
All right. Okay, so hold that distraction thought there. So you get to, you do the Panama game, and you do the Scotland game, going towards the World Cup. How, after the Scotland game, I think the Scotland game, what was the result of that game? I think it lost 2-1 or something like that. Yeah,
3-1, and it was a tough game, because obviously we'd taken the lead and done pretty well. Or 3-2 rather, we lost. Yeah, 3-2. Bunny scored 2. What a great atmosphere! I think Scottish football women was coming out of revival. We played at the historic Hampden Park. I'd actually been on a tour of Hampden Park originally. To be able to step out and coach in that environment, train in that environment, was a fantastic experience. But prior to that, there's a little story that went on. Obviously, we had different flights. That's a whole other story. We were 4 or 5 different flights that took us to. My group ended up going to Morocco. Some ended up going to London. Some ended up going to. We all ended up going to London. We all ended up getting to London, then Glasgow via Casablanca in Morocco.
Oh my gosh.
Flight that went out, including a group that didn't get out at the same time, which in itself, as part of that distraction, was I look back and you can laugh at it now, but it was quite comical.
So how did that weigh on the team? How was that just
It
the coaching
was tough.
staff? Was it just the
Yeah,
coaching staff or the entire team or members of the team?
it was tough because we went 3 days, myself included, without any gear, any clothing. We missed half of our kit was left or somewhere in Morocco. So in terms of we had literally 10 cases of equipment that needed to ship to go to the World Cup, and only 5 of them arrived. We had to literally the day before we played Scotland, we had players who didn't have their suitcases did not arrive.
Okay, can I
So
ask? Can I ask you this? In
Yeah.
such a chaotic atmosphere, who was the calming effect and who was the person that had to be calmed?
It's a good question. I think we all had to put on a good face, and I say always do our best Denzel Washington actor's impression. I think we were all very obviously perturbed by the circumstances, but I think all the staff did, for the most part, did the best that we can during those unforeseen times. I think upon reflection, I think we could have even done a better job, to be honest, of blocking some of those things out. But, it's human nature. It's human nature. Some things are in your control, some things out of your control. But I think it's important, again, in terms of the experiences that you go through, upon reflection, you look back and say, hey, I thought we did this very well. And upon reflection, we could have done this better.
So you have So you have that luxury now. Now you go through all that chaotic situation, and you're in France now. You went straight to Grenoble, I assume, right?
No, we spent, which I think was a fantastic experience. We were able to get to train for 5 days at Lyon's training facility, which is fantastic. And the people at Lyon, treat us marvelous. They've got a great background in soccer.
For the public consumption, Lyon is the place you go if you go from Paris. The normal hub to Grenoble is Lyon. So I remember traveling and stopping off at Lyon. Most of the time you stop off at Lyon to go to Grenoble, correct? So you didn't go straight into Grenoble, you stayed at Lyon's.
We flew into Lyon and then obviously stayed at a hotel just outside their training facility. As a brand new stadium, probably about 2 years old at the time we were there. So their state-of-the-art facility was fantastic. What was also good to see is that obviously Lyon's women's team is obviously arguably one of the best.
And that's where the finals was kept too.
That's where the finals was kept.
Yeah.
That's where the finals were kept. So we had a great chance to stay at the facility, stayed there, used everything that they had to offer, their training, the weight rooms, obviously medical facility. We ate lunch there at times as well. So we really had a great prep.
No anxiety to get to Grenoble?
No, not really. I think it was a situation where we were just kind of anxious to kind of get on and get settled. But for the most part, I think we were just kind of taking it in stride. I think at that point now we'd kind of settled in. We'd been off of the planes, trains, and automobiles. We've been through with that.
And you hit ground.
So now we were just kind of looking forward to getting settled in Grenoble, which is obviously a fantastic, picturesque city. With the mountains and everything in the background, getting there. And the backdrop of that stadium is like no other.
Yeah.
Really picturesque. And the river running through the cities is fantastic, separating the mountains.
So now you're into Brazil. You said you had the opportunity with Martha. We know what Martha is like in terms of ability, but there's always a question mark whether she was gonna play that first game or not. Did you guys prepare for her or without her, or it didn't matter?
Yeah, we prepared both ways. With her in the lineup and with her out. Obviously, we showed film, showed some of their tendencies, areas that we knew they excelled in, areas that we looked to kind of exploit going into that game. I knew before. I mean, I have a pretty good relationship with Marta, and she's a stand-up individual. They were coming off their field from a pre-match walkthrough while we were coming on. I saw her, we embraced, we talked, asked how she was doing, how the lesionado was, how the injury was. And she was pretty frank. She said, it's 50-50. She said, I'll see how I feel in the morning. I could go, but I don't know. It's the coach's decision, and whether or not they want to hold her back for the longer of the tournament was something they would make the decision probably that night heading to the morning. So, which is where we were at. She's pretty forthright saying, and if anyone knows Marta, she wants to play. So, I think the decision was, we want to go deep into this tournament. That's their mindset, and so we didn't want to lose arguably our best player. Yeah. So they obviously held her out that game.
So, were you aware of the rain? I think I asked you that. Were you aware of the rain that was falling out?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just talked about the conditions and what the pitch might be like. It's more or less in terms of making sure the players had adequate footwear and preparing for what it might be, and taking care of as many, covering all the details that we possibly can, that, we get there and find out they don't have the proper footwear. So we just kind of went through it. Thankfully, those state-of-the-art pitches drained really, really well. So it didn't come out. And obviously the sun came out a little bit.
The sun came out, yes.
Yeah, it wasn't such a major.
So I want to go step by step into that first game, which was basically a good performance. You're under pressure. I've never really seen anything like that. You gave up about 5 or so corner kicks early.
Yeah, early.
It's like no flow of the game, and it's just corner kicks. It's almost like a practice. We're gonna practice corner kicks.
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely came on the front foot. I think again, upon reflection, Brazil came out and pressed us. I think they recognized areas in terms of where they can exploit in terms of us looking to play out. And, there's nothing that you can simulate in terms of the atmosphere, the pressure, just the overall occasion. I think for the first part, got the best of our young group. And so we, tried to weather the storm the best we can. We're playing against Brazil, has plenty of experience throughout, on the pitch. I mean, Marta wasn't there, and in some aspects we look at it and say, well, upon reflection, it's probably the worst thing that could happen because they're less reliant on her, and more people stepped up, in the game. Players that we knew were good, but didn't think they were going to have much as an impact as they did on the occasion. And obviously, Christiane somehow rolled back the clock.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, and obviously she's been a great pro and a great professional for years, and you weren't sure if she was going to start, but she, obviously had a hell of a game against us. Highly motivated, and obviously her confidence grew in the game, and I think obviously for us as players, our players obviously are a little bit more, a little bit more nervous than we would probably anticipated, just because I think the occasion got to them. But as we settled in, we had some good moments, but overall they just simply weren't good enough for a team that was very experienced.
What happened between the Brazil game and us? So fairly flat. If that's a modest assessment.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously had the Italy game in between that we needed to prepare for. The Italy game was a little bit different. I thought the Italy game, we made a lot of mental errors again a little bit earlier on. I think the way that we set up, I mean, we always knew the Italians are fantastic defending wise, so they weren't going to give you a whole lot. But I think, at times, again, we're a little bit sloppy in terms of our giveaways and not retaining the possession the way we want, not being fluid in the attack. And then simply, again, with young teams switching off on set plays, which was something that, again, was something that we didn't do really well. in terms of taking responsibility in those moments, where we kind of let ourselves down. Obviously, the Italy game heading into the Australia game was really about pride now, and we were hopeful that we were able to again, settle in. Obviously, we went away to Rem, came back to Grenoble. In between
was it a friendly environment you found? Or when I say friendly, I mean just for your comfort, for your peace of mind, knowing that you're not going to a new city, you've been there before. Does that help mentally?
Well, I think, the one thing is the Brazilians travel very well, and the Jamaicans were out in full force, but the Brazilians travel extremely well. If you look at the numbers in terms of viewed audience, I think that Brazil-Jamaica game was the seventh highest viewed game in the entire World Cup. So, it had a lot of eyes. The Brazilians were out in full force, and as anyone's as boisterous as West Indies and Jamaican people as Brazilians as well.
Yeah.
So I thought that atmosphere was a lot different going into the Italian game. They had their fans out, but I didn't feel that was nearly as intimidating the first game. So after that game, heading into the last game, it was really about us being better defensively. I thought we weren't, even though we had our plan in terms of how we wanted to organize, a lot of mental errors in terms of how we went about and approached things, weren't up to our standard. I think again, some of the things that we could have probably adjusted and done better as a staff could have come into play. It probably didn't help our players as much as we could have, in those moments. But overall, you're dealing with, you can't replicate, a World Cup environment, and again, we were in the group of death with, look at Australia. They're a relatively young team as well, but when you have the likes of Sam Kerr, Emily Van Egmond, who are in their late 20s, but they have over 100 caps for them already, speaks volumes in terms of the experiences that they've had, and ultimately, that's something that our region, the USA, the Canadas, and Mexicos, continue to be those teams that are, funding aside, they're the teams that continue to get to these tournaments because they have that experience. They've had that experience coming through programs from 17s through 20s to the senior women's team, and you can't replicate that. There's nothing that you can do to replicate that.
Were you part of the staff for the last the under 20 that with the under 20 Reggae Girlz that how was that? In talking to a few, they seemed like the public was a little disappointed that and it seemed like it was the coming out of Jody Brown.
Yeah, I mean, look, we played very well. I'm pleasantly surprised.
Are you the coach of the under 20? Are you the coach of the under 20, or you're part of the coaching staff then?
I went down. I assisted Xavier, obviously, as the advisor. I went down there and helped and helped with the coaching as well, and did the goalkeeping as well. So I was obviously an integral part of that process in terms of how we wanted to do, and especially in terms of how we were looking to move the program forward. In terms of our principles that we want to implement. The funny thing about it, though, is we missed, due to injury in school, 4 or 5 really key players who have been a part of the senior program who actually didn't go to that tournament because they were injured. Riley Patterson was out, Giselle Washington was out, Sade Adamokolo at USC didn't participate in that tournament. So 4 or 5 of players who've been a part of our senior women's team weren't a part of this group. So it was great to see the players who were called in to replace them do exceptionally well. We were arguably one of the youngest groups there. The good thing is, out of that group, we have 7 of those players who are returning for the next cycle, and that's from a team that obviously beat Canada 3-1. So it's very exciting, and I think, to be honest, I think we just ran out of steam. I think we ran out of, we played a very, good Dominican Republic team. I actually thought we were better. We just didn't put our chances away. The longer the game went with their crowd, they grew in confidence. And then I also thought, from a defensive standpoint, not just our goalkeeping defending, I think from a defending standpoint, we weren't as good as that we needed to be. And so they capitalized on their chances very well. But overall, everyone wants to go to a Youth World Cup because it provides those players an experience. But overall, the objective of your U15, U17, and U20 programs is really to see how many of those players end up playing for your first team.
Correct.
And I think the bigger picture is, and what's really exciting is that I see a lot of those players coming on, going through. Jody Brown, to see Jody Brown, who with the senior team plays an integral part. She's an extremely good player. But to see her mature and to see her take on a leadership role has been fantastic. And so I'm really excited to see how she gets along well. She'll be in a great environment at Florida State with Mark Akorian, who's a great coach. He develops players to become pros. And one of the reasons why I think she went there is that she's going to have that in mind. She's going to be able to develop into a player, and after the next 4 years, I have no doubt she's going to be one of our stalwarts with this women's senior national team for sure.
Okay, I'll be remiss if I didn't ask how you making out with the coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I just moved to Baton Rouge. She's assistant coach with LSU. We were in Jacksonville, so we moved here. I spent literally the first 5 weeks out of a suitcase. I came out from the seniors team. She moved. I was living out of a suitcase for 5 weeks, back and forth. From the senior team, I literally came home, kissed her, packed a suitcase, and left again after 3 days to go with the U20s, and we were there for 21 days. And so, the pandemic has kind of grounded me for a bit. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're here. We're close to one of the epicenters in New Orleans, but we've just been, taking the opportunity to kind of, to stay calm, blessed that we're healthy. Obviously, remain optimistic that we'll get back where we should be, but we're experimenting, or we're going through an experience that has not been seen during this generation, and so really no one really knows how to, or what's going to come out of this. I do know that football and sports, we do know how much of an integral part it plays in our lives. I think that's been evident. We don't know what that's going to look like in terms of sports in general as we come out of it. But overall, we've been good. We've been healthy. And obviously, we're blessed to be in a situation where we're not, overly, hit financially because of obviously everything that's gone on. So
are you with any programs in the U.S. right now? Are you still with any university? I mean, I know everything is kind of dormant right now based on the COVID-19, but
obviously, we left Jacksonville University. I still do some consulting things for some clubs in terms of advisory roles, in terms of organizational structure with technical directors, executives, and boards, in terms of putting things in place. Obviously, my background as a technical director, I served obviously in Canada, in Ontario at the Burlington Youth Soccer Club, which was obviously one of the biggest clubs in the world. I was there when we implemented, or part of that shift that got the OPDL franchise. And I obviously keep abreast of what's going on in Canada with obviously one of my staff members, Sanford Carabin, who's a technical director at North Miss. We speak every day, and obviously I'm very well of what's going on with football in Canada. So I've got a good pulse of what's happening with there, as well as what's happening within, obviously the MLS academies and everything as it pertains to that. But yeah, I just do a lot of consulting as well in terms of trying to help. I do believe giving back and helping in clubs do the right things in the best interest of their members, and i.e. meaning their players. And so I have a huge passion for that, and I want to see and kids do well. I want to see them go on and reach their full potential. But I think it's important that as I continue to be blessed to be able to do what I'm doing, that it's important that I give back to the game that's been so good to me. over the course of the years.
Yeah, I can attest to that based on the fact that even at the early stage in the coaching with Toronto Lynx, you know, as an organization, you put in the word for us with the owner to come into the community, the Caribbean community, with your franchise and to expose, you know, to play an all-star team, to expose some of the players in our community. And, you know, that was really good. And it says a lot for where you, the person you are and where you probably will be heading. So I want to wish you all the best and in your career. I want you to keep safe. And I want to thank you for the time you gave me today.
Absolutely. I want you to continue to grow the game, do what you do as well. I mean, obviously you're one of those soldiers on the ground, making sure that people are connected not only within your community but in the bigger picture as well. And so we're all connected to this beautiful game, and I think it's important that we continue to be connected, especially in this time and day and age. It's important that we always never forget where we've come from, because that's the only way that you can map where you're going. So continue to do what you're doing as well, and may God bless you, and hope the best. And anytime you need anything, by all means, let me know.
All right. Thanks, Buzz. And you take care.
Thank you.
All right. Stay tuned for Star Soccer Review magazine on the Reggae Girlz on World Cup fans.